Hello, Deborah Ely.
Hi, Richard. How are you?
I am very well, thank you, and delighted to see you. And I was casting my mind back because I was fortunate enough to be part of the Bundanon Trust board in 2006 when you were first appointed. And I was remembering the excitement of the board when you accepted the position. I know we were all really excited, but I'm wondering how you were feeling at that stage when you came on board for the job.
Well, of course, I was really thrilled. I was also excited, but I think very quickly became a little bit overwhelmed by just what was involved in actually running Bundanon, because you realise it's much bigger than many people think.
So what was your perception of the challenge? What was your sense of what you had to do?
I just think, you know, it's very different if you've been running galleries and art museums to actually realise that you're also running, at the time, you know, a working farm, and that there are so many buildings and actually so much bush and landscape to look after, and that they don't look after themselves. And you know, very, very quickly, I realised that I was going to have to learn a lot of new things, I suppose.
And I mean, under your stewardship, Bundanon and of course Riversdale have not just evolved; they have transformed. What would you pick as you look back as some of the main transformational moments, in those developmental landmarks?
Look, I think one of the really important things, and one of the things I really value the most, is the way that we've built a place in the hearts of the people in the region itself. Because I do think that when I first went to Bundanon, I did sense that a lot of people locally were not necessarily regular visitors and were not really aware of what an amazing thing Bundanon was, sitting right on their doorstep. And I was very keen initially to try and make Bundanon something that everybody really loved and sort of valued and was proud of.
You talk about the importance of that local community engagement, but also something like the residency program, for example, is internationally acclaimed. How much have you enjoyed watching that develop in the way that it has to its present state, or at least its present state pre-COVID?
Yeah, look, I think that's been an enormous achievement on behalf of a whole number of people around the trust, the staff, of course, and the connections and networks we built with the arts companies around Australia and elsewhere. But I think, you know, while the residency program was always very strong at Bundanon and had lots of wonderful artists from overseas and so on coming in, it was still quite small and quite discreet 15 years ago. And I think we built a dance studio in 2009, and that was a huge breakthrough because the performing artists really coming into the program made an enormous difference. It's always been a lovely, fairly quiet retreat for, you know, for writing and for composers and for visual artists, but the performing artists bring a different kind of energy to it all, and they come in numbers, and, you know, they make a noise. There's beautiful music coming out of the place all the time, and they were able to use the dance studio. All these different kind of performing arts people were able to use that studio. So that was the beginning of a real explosion of more artists coming and more diverse artists coming. So I think, you know, that's been a real it's not just got bigger, but I think it's become more visible and more significant because of that added layer.
Bundanon and Riversdale, of course, were the gifts to the nation from Arthur and Yvonne Boyd, and you've kept a very close relationship with the Boyd family, a very close involvement with the Boyd family. How important has that been to the way in which Bundanon has developed?
Look, I think it's very important. I've never met Arthur, unfortunately, but I was lucky enough to get to know Yvonne Boyd quite well. And when I first got the job, I flew down to Melbourne and went out to Gisborne to meet her and talk with her. And in fact, I did that regularly throughout the whole period she was alive, going and talking to her a few times a year. And if I had thoughts about anything I thought we should be doing or engaging with, I would always run them past her and, you know, make sure I had her support. So I think the support of the family has been very important for me, because although of course the family doesn't really have any actual legal role in terms of overseeing what the trust does, I think it feels very important, it's felt very important to me to sort of honour their understanding of Arthur's intentions. And, you know, fortunately, I mean, even this week, in the last week, I've had emails from 2 of Arthur's children who are just over the moon with what's happening, which actually is incredibly moving. It's wonderful, in fact. So, and of course, the Boyds do come and stay on the property. Some members of the family come and stay once or twice a year. So they quietly get on and see what we're doing. I had Jamie Boyd here. He actually walked on the roof of the new gallery a month or so ago, a couple of months ago, before they've sort of filled the landscape back in now. But and he was thrilled. You know, they were really thrilled with it. So it's an important relationship, and one that will, I hope, be ongoing, because of course all of Arthur's grandchildren and hopefully their children are all artists and are all very interested and involved in what we do. So it's wonderful, actually. It's really great.
One of the other very important areas of relationship that you've nurtured in your role has been an ever-growing closeness with First Nations communities. How has that added to to Bundanon's cultural complexity and to an understanding of the landscape there and country?
Oh, it's been a really, really fantastic part of the whole opportunity to work at Bundanon, and to lead it has been to bring that community, those multiple communities actually, in much closer to us. And, people initially indicated to me they didn't really feel that local Aboriginal people in particular would feel very comfortable coming to Bundanon, that they wouldn't see that it was for them. And I just thought, well, let's just ask them if they'd like to come. And indeed, they have come, in droves throughout my time there. Obviously, we've involved First Nations people in the programs. They're at the heart of nearly all the public programs we do, or many of those public programs. But there are many, many things that Bundanon has done which are sort of more private or just not so visible, with different parts of the community, with children, with elders, healing programs, with men, many, many things. We've just been able to respond to what the communities have asked if they can do with us. And so that's been fantastic, that they've trusted us and that they've seen that Bundanon is a place where they are welcome, they feel safe, and they want to engage and continue to come. But of course, the most important thing is the stuff that we've learned from those exchanges, which is, you mentioned managing the place, and in particular, of course, the traditional fire management, which is a cultural practice, not so much a land, it's a mixture of land management practice, and it's just a way of living with the environment that traditional people have engaged in for millennia. And of course, we've been supporting that cultural practice to happen at Bundanon for about 6 years. We've just literally this week signed another MOU with the Fire Sticks mob down in Nara for them to continue to work on country and carry out what they would, have done before, and to help us keep a healthy bush, keep the bush in good shape. So we do that in concert with them. I mean, they take that practice forward, but we work with them on so many different things. We're planting a medicine garden as part of the Janet Lawrence Tree Lines track. That's about to go in, that very long project, and that's being done with local custodians as well. So many, many, many layers and many learnings, I'd say. A great privilege, actually.
So all of that wonderful learning, as you say, is part really of the rich tradition of education in various forms at Bundanon. That First Nations sharing of knowledge has been hugely important, but how important also have the other areas of education that Bundanon has focused on, from education of children and students to a vast range of people?
Yeah, well, I think it's always been at the heart of the Trust's mission, is to not just share the properties and the landscape in the bush, but to actually encourage an engagement with creative practice there. So that is one of the main things that we do. In fact, our biggest audiences are probably children and young people, which is much to the envy of many other museums. It'll be interesting to see how that statistic changes, but over time. But when we're open more to adults, but the children come, and it's that whole immersing yourself in the bush, and actually the bush is your kind of workshop and your studio, and they're encouraged to really take risks and to actually make artworks outside. And so it's very, very central, and it's great fun. I think there's, we've been able to bring those amazing artists that we have coming to stay with us together with a lot of children and young people, and enable those young kids to see what it is to be a professional artist and to learn about different kinds of art practices which they might never find out about at home. Sort of experimental music and experimental dance and performance, as well as painting and sculpture and sort of sound walks and all sorts of different things. So it's absolutely at the heart of what we do, and absolutely at the heart of the next phase of what we're doing as well.
So as you reflect on all these things that others have learned during their time or their visits to Bundanon, what do you think you've learned from Bundanon?
Well, I've learned how little I know, I think, is the first thing. I mean, I think that, I think that's why I've ended up staying at Bundanon for such a long time. Well, for me, it's a long time, over 15 years, because at each turn there's been another whole opportunity to really learn something that I would not have had the opportunity to know about in any other context. I mean, my knowledge about the bush was, tragically small when I went to Bundanon, really. I mean, I wouldn't have known the difference between a lovely flowering lantana bush and a butterwang, really, or some other, native plant. I mean, I was, anyway, I've learned a lot about what the bush, can look like if it's healthy, and how difficult and challenging it is to manage it, and all the complexities of that, and learned a lot about, obviously, First Nations attitudes to place, an enormous amount about how people benefit from those kind of environments, how really getting out of the city and just being quiet and reflective is really generative. I mean, if you take what the artists tell you, it's just, I met someone yesterday and she just said her experience as an artist in residence at Bundanon had been the most important experience of her life. It had projected her practice forward incrementally, massively, because it's just, we just don't slow down enough and we don't, give ourselves enough time and space. And so I don't think I'm not a very slow person myself. I struggle with that. And I think the realizing, people continually saying, this is doing something incredible for me. The time is multiplying while I'm here, because I'm just so able to be present and be in the space. So there are so many different learnings. I've also learned, Richard, that you should never underestimate your audiences, because, we've done some pretty wild things out at Bundanon. It is a big sandpit for experimentation. There have been some great events, some really incredible. I mean, I saw a wonderful dancer doing a woman doing a haka in a tree, with 700 people around the bottom of the tree, almost trying to get up it to see what she was doing. You just, wonderful, wonderful images, different experimental things. And the audiences, and many of those have been predominantly local audiences, have absolutely lapped it up. They haven't walked away from it. They haven't said, oh, that's weird old contemporary art or something. They've just fully trusted us, gone on the journey and engaged. And, we've never had to pull back in any thought anything we wanted to do, because we know that the audiences will enjoy it and they will come along on the journey. I don't know why that's different from going into a performing arts centre or an art gallery in the city, but for some reason coming out to us, people are prepared to open their minds and relax with the journey, I suppose. So yeah, it's been great.
You've built up a wonderful working team at Bundanon. What has been the ethos of that work environment that you've wanted to create?
Well, look, it's interesting. They're just fantastic. And that is actually, frankly, the thing I will miss the most is my colleagues. And over time, I've had some just brilliant colleagues at Bundanon. I think, and when I first went there was a wonderful man working there, I will name him, called Simon Hale. And I read his application for his original job at Bundanon. And in the application, it said, I have my own dog. And I just thought that was hilarious. But I realized that in the country, if you're going for a job as a property assistant, you have to have your own dog to kind of, I don't know, whatever, do something with cattle. And it's such a diverse workforce. And look, the staff are wonderful. They're really generous and very professional and very supportive of each other. And they really they're very focused on the audiences and the customers. I mean, they have to be, because we often have people living with us for up to 6 weeks, so they get to know them and they have to look after them. And they're just amazing people from all walks of life. It's very diverse, lots of different ages and backgrounds and so on. So yeah, I won't get that anywhere else, I don't think.
The Boyd Education Centre at Riversdale, of course, was there when you took up your position, but the new art museum and the associated learning centre and accommodation and cafe and so on has been a massive new project on your watch, and it's at an incredibly exciting stage.
Yes, it is, and it's been relatively unimpacted by COVID, actually. So it's meant that the built infrastructure has able to proceed pretty much as planned, and it's nearly complete. They were just putting in the landscaping and the new plants last week, so the lights are in the gallery. It's looking absolutely fantastic. It's a really astonishing structure. When you drive down the hill and you see it, you almost can't believe it. Because the bridge, there is a structure that holds the Creative Learning Centre, which we call the bridge, and it is literally a flood bridge that runs across the landscape, very, very high, 20 metres high at some point, I think. It's 160 metres long. And so when children and other people stay, they'll be staying in cabins, which are along this kind of incredible open air structure right up in the sky. It's quite fabulous. And, and the art museum's right embedded in the hill, but it's got all this natural light that comes down from the top, which you're not aware of when you go in, but, from the outside. But when you go in, it's, flooded with light. So it's very beautiful. It's very beautiful.
Are you a little sad to be leaving before it's thoroughly up and running?
Oh, look, of course I'm sad, but where do you draw the line? I mean, I did promise myself and my family that I would wrap it up when this building was complete. I mean, it's been planned for many, many years, and it's a long and slightly grueling process. Anyone who's seen grand designs would know that. So,
And this is a very grand design, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. All sorts of ups and downs. So, look, I'm very, very happy to be handing it over. I know, and I'm very excited to come back and see, to see it in operation, and to actually just experience it as other audiences will experience. And but I'm just happy to see it complete and looking as beautiful as we thought it would. You can't quite believe it when you see something on paper and then it's actually physically there and it's actually better than you thought. It's really special. And it couldn't be anywhere else. It is designed around that landscape and around the other existing buildings. It speaks to them really beautifully. It shows them all off wonderfully. the whole site is totally enhanced by this. It's like it's been waiting for it, really.
As you cast your mind back now over all of these years, is there a final enduring image or memory of Bundanon that you think you'll always carry?
Look, there are so many, Richard, but I was very fortunate to go down to the river one morning with some of the local custodians. They had a group of artists with them, and they were going to talk to us about the cosmology, Indigenous cosmology, and so on. But it was really at the crack of dawn, and as the songman was telling us about the fish and the way that they come seasonally, he just ran his hand in the direction of the river, and suddenly all these fish just suddenly came up in the river. And then he kind of arced his hand around to talk about the direction of the wind. And as he did so, a bird, just a seahawk, I think, flew exactly in the arc of his hand on the wind. It was quite incredible. Everyone was just awestruck. And then, he drew a picture in the sand of the story of creation, and then walked us through the drawing along the river. And as he did so, just exactly as he did so, the water came up and just erased the drawing behind us. It was very, very beautiful, very special. And he sang the hills on the river at Bundanon, and the echo comes back perfectly at that point in the landscape. And, memories like that, I felt so privileged to be there and to get that sort of close encounter with someone who knew exactly what they were looking at and how to read it, and was able to so poetically impart it to us. And I mean, there are many experiences like that and many other funny things and so on, but that was a very, very special moment. And it's one of the things that'll stay with me, really.
Well, an extraordinary moment indeed. And you have achieved so much with and for the Boyd's gift to the nation. So, Deborah Ely, thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you.